going on, because I declare by the time I turn 30 years old, I will have at least $1 million. All right, that's what I'm saying. So on the website, I'm walking you through books I'm reading, conferences I'm going to, seminars I'm going to, things I'm doing, plans I'm making. Everything is on there, and I want you guys to know that I have done this, the Cupcake Gallery, with no financial support from any bank. So there's no loans whatsoever. I went strictly on donations and investors.
This ambitious young man is Darius Williams, aka Darius Cooks. And a couple of months ago, I sat down with his head baker for part one of our series where we explored the allegations against Darius Williams that he is allegedly a con artist who rips off his most ardent supporters with false advertising and shoddy products. I wanted to explore how we got there, and so I looked to Darius's past to see one of his earliest investors, a man by the name of Lavelle. I sat down with Vel and had a discussion with him about the early days of Darius Cooks and how Vel played an integral role in helping him to start that business. However, what happened between Cooks and Vel would end up being a precursor for the allegations that we see today. Lavelle was one of the earliest investors that Darius was so excited about when he announced his goals to become a millionaire. Let's hear from him. Thank you so much for coming on, and please introduce yourself and give your social medias.
Hi, my name is Lavelle, aka Vel is what I go by on social media. I have a YouTube channel called The Randomness of Vel, as well as The Evolution of Vel. And you can find me on all social media platforms at I am Vel B.
For those that are uninitiated, we are talking about Darius Williams, known popularly on social media as Darius Cooks. When did you first meet Darius?
I met Darius it was about 2000 or 2001. We actually met under the guise of basically dating, and we dated for approximately 2 years. And after maybe a few months of a break, or a year of a break after we were no longer a couple, we actually became friends, and we were friends for nearly a decade after that.
So that's a long time.
Absolutely.
To be
Yes.
friends with someone.
Yes.
So is it fair to say that you got to know Darius pretty well in the 10 years that you knew him, whether you were romantic or just friends?
Absolutely. I know him as well as he knows himself, except for who he became. That part was a little bit of a shocker.
Did you guys live together at one point?
No, we never actually lived together. I mean, he stayed with me for a couple weeks while he was in between apartments when he got evicted, one of the times that he got evicted.
Mm-hmm. So throughout the time that you knew him, that was like a continuing thing, getting evicted?
Oh, yeah. I would say in the time that I knew him, he was evicted from at least 3 apartments that I can think of off the top of my head, maybe even 4. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. And then there were some I found out about after the fact with all that's going on now.
So when you met him, first of all, let me ask you this. At that time, what was your profession? What were you doing?
At that time, I was a contractor. I had a business as a carpenter contractor or remodeling contractor, as well as I worked as a home inspector for a government agency.
Okay. And what did you know Darius to be doing? Like, what was his job at that time?
When I first met him, he worked for a payroll company, kind of in customer support of some level. And honestly, that was his job with a few different companies in the time that I knew him. Even at one point with the school system, the Chicago public school system. So it was always, his jobs were always in the payroll field, payroll processing. And
I think that I saw this at in one of your videos, but didn't he run into some type of ethical, at least, issues with one of his employers in that role, working in payroll?
Yes, and that would be the first company that he worked for when we first met. I would say within first year or so, he created his own payroll company, deluxe payroll, because there's proof of that on the internet. He created the deluxe payroll company, and he tried to basically take clients from the larger firm that he worked for, and they got word of it and they terminated him.
Mm-hmm. So he was poaching clients allegedly.
Absolutely. Yeah.
Employer. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. You wouldn't know if he had like a do not compete clause or anything like that, do you?
It was a major company, like one of the top 3, so I'm sure.
Yeah.
I'm absolutely sure.
Yeah. So so when that happened and he was running this separate payroll company, can you tell me anything about like his personality or anything that you kind of see echoed back to this time now when he was doing that?
Yeah, I would say for me, the part of his personality is being a know-it-all. And I remember when he first shared the idea of creating the payroll company with me, I was really adamant that it wasn't a good idea. And, told him like, this could get you terminated. And he assured me that he had it all figured out. But the fact that he wouldn't listen to any wise counsel, there's many examples of that back then, but even now, you can still see that Darius is a know-it-all. And then the other piece of it is when he does get caught up, which he always does, he never admits any wrongdoing. It's always someone else's fault, or he has an excuse that, totally justifies his actions.
So after that, my understanding is that Darius starts transitioning into his cooking being a part of his business, or something that he was trying to pursue and turn into something. You kind of saw the genesis of his chef business, I guess is a better way to put it.
Absolutely. So with Darius, so I would say for probably the first 5 or 6 years, he basically was only working corporate jobs and trying, on the back end. What I later learned is I think deluxe payroll, even when he got fired, he kind of kept it going on the back end behind the scenes. I just wasn't privy to that, to any of that. But he was really just trying to work corporate jobs, but he would keep getting terminated or laid off. And I didn't bother digging into the whys. I just kind of went with whatever his reasoning was, like, oh, they just laid me off. But now looking back, it looks like there was probably a level of violation of company policies in each of those situations that led to him being terminated. He really never lasted at any jobs more than maybe a year or so. And then something would happen and he would be out of a job, which was really strange for someone who's as intelligent and quick and charismatic as him. Like in a traditional sense, a person like that would be extremely successful in corporate America. I'm not even half as charismatic as him. I'm smart, but I'm not half as charismatic. And I have never been fired from a job that I didn't want to be fired from, So I did not look at it in that sense back then, but now seeing how it has evolved, I'm like, okay, so you've been this person all along the way. And I think the corporate environment just did not lend itself to give him enough leeway to do the things that he wanted to do to create his wealth or whatever his schemes were. So what he was always a cook. That was something that we all knew about. If he had parties or events and things like that, he was always the person that would cook. So for him to take that talent and then try to parlay it into a business was not foreign to any of us at all during that time. And periodically, even during those years of him working in corporate America, he would do a catering job here or there if someone had a special event. So for him to figure out a way to capitalize off of that we all were really like, oh, that's a good idea for you, you know.
So I know that I was talking about the food aspect, and I do want to come back to that. But when you were talking about more of Darius's background, I think I need to go back to that because I think you have probably, of everyone that's willing to talk, you probably have more information on that than anyone else. So I know Darius made several claims coming up about his background that people have challenged. And I wanted to know if you had any insight on that or had heard anything about that. So first of all was, I think, attending some type of Bible college and getting a degree in divinity. Do you know what the claim was and what the truth is as to that claim, if you're aware?
I am aware. So this for me goes way back to a decade ago, where during once we became friends, after we were no longer dating, I was hearing stories just around and about that he was making the claim that he had a degree in divinity studies and biblical studies, I think is what he was calling it. And it was strange to me because although I didn't know of him attending college periodically, sporadically, I never knew of him completing at all. And so it's very strange to me that mysteriously, all of a sudden, he has a degree. And I don't remember, for one, you going consistent enough to even have a degree. But for two, where was this graduation ceremony? Because I'm very close to you. I would have at least heard about. Like, this is a person I talk to every day. The way that he does his IG lives now was the way that I talk to him, literally 2, 3, 4 times a day before I go to bed, all of it, even as friends. And so, so it never made sense to me, but I did not dig into it because it didn't affect me. It just didn't quite make sense. And I didn't even look at him as a liar. I think in my mind, it was like, maybe there's a misunderstanding here. I just gave a lot of benefit of the doubt. And I think part of me didn't want to dig to realize that he was a liar. And I did not realize that it was a complete farce until a month or two ago, when someone reached out to the Moody Bible Institute, which is the college that he claims that he graduated from. And they replied in an email that he never graduated from that college.
Okay.
And they looked up their records for over 30 years.
Okay. So just to kind of piggyback on that, when you knew him, it's around the time he would have been attending college.
Oh, absolutely. Yes.
And you were close enough that you spoke to him multiple times a day, and you never heard of a graduation, were invited to a graduation.
No.
Saw any pictures or heard any friends talking about a graduation.
No.
And it wasn't just you and him in an isolated thing. You guys had a group of friends. Like, I think you said 5 or 6 other people.
More like 10 to 12 friends. But because Darius and I were so close that I know his church family, I know his I know his mom, I met his siblings. I know Darius, and a lot of people that are a part of his family, I'm still Facebook friends with. I kind of backed off when, we fell out or whatever a decade ago, but I know Darius very, very well. I'm not some, and I even hesitate to call myself an ex, because the truth is we dated for 2 years, but we were friends for another 8 years. So really the friendship was the primary part of our relationship. And so I was best friend, know your life, not that ex who was only this little segment of your life and then all these things they don't know about. That was just not our relationship.
Yeah, I know what you're saying. So basically, sometimes you can be dating someone and all you are to them or they are to you is just, we go on dates, we go to each other's house. We don't really get into each other's friendships and family and things like that. That wasn't you guys. You guys were friends.
Yes. Okay. I know his best friends, hung out with them many times. His group of friends that he's still friends with to this day, I know where they live. It's So
circling it back around, if he had graduated, you would have at least known, being that immense in each other's lives.
Okay. Absolutely.
Another claim that Darius made, now that we're talking about his work history pre-Darius Cooks, is that he said that he was, working, he said sometimes payroll, sometimes HR. He had a corporate office and a corner office, and that he can do a merger and acquisition in his sleep based on that work experience. Like, he learned mergers and acquisitions at his job. And that made a red flag go off for me, because a merger and acquisition is a legal mechanism. Like, I'm an attorney, and like it really has to do with like corporations and one company absorbing the other. And I could see maybe like, oh, you have to onboard people or something, but you don't actually do the merger or the acquisition if you're in HR. So I wanted to kind of get your feedback on those types of claims. Did you see any evidence of him doing anything like that at work, especially if he was only working somewhere for a year?
Absolutely not. He never had upper management roles in any of the corporate jobs that I knew that he had. As I stated, they were payroll related roles. When he worked for the Chicago Public School District, I think it was a higher level of processing payroll of some sort, but again, just payroll, not HR, but payroll. And I know some HR departments are very close, or sometimes serve double purposes in some smaller organizations with HR, but the places that he worked at was not the case. I know that his story evolved once he ran off from Chicago to New York. He created a new persona, and then I started hearing of that story. So supposedly that role that he speaks of, the corner office, et cetera, was a job that he had in New York. So at that point, we were not friends. But what I have learned is that he actually did post. This is where he gets in trouble, because he posts everything on social media.
The thing and hit him in the cubicle?
Yes.
Yeah.
So that is the same timeline that he claims that he had the corner office in some New York high-rise environment. And it's just a cubicle like any other cubicle. And that's the job he also reportedly, from his words, that he resigned from. But there's thoughts that maybe that's another place where he may have actually been let go as well. And there are people who were his coworkers who have made social media comments, but like most of, kind of like my situation with all the people I know in Chicago, many people just don't want to really be out there and speak up. So
yeah,
but they did allude to that it's not the story that he's telling.
So we'll just say allegedly.
Allegedly, yes.
Okay.
Yes.
All right. So let's move back into the food business, and that's starting to evolve and become a thing. So I know that you guys were so close that, you were assisting him at some point, like when he was auditioning for different things, you were doing the filming for him, fixing up his kitchen, stuff like that. Can you tell me about that?
Yeah. Some of the stuff is like coming back to me because, contrary to his belief, I have not been obsessing over him for the past decade. I've moved on with life and the 20 grand he stole from us.
And we're going to get to that. We're going to get to that. No spoilers. Okay. I have it written right here in big red ink.
So some of this is coming back to me as, things are evolving. So what I didn't think of when I did the original video was that, yes, I did help him record. I did the videography work for his audition for, I think it was Master Chef on the Food Network. And so for me back then, the Food Network was a little newer. I'm not a foodie. I'm a foodie, but I can cook, but I'm not into just watching food shows. And so he had way more of an understanding and background of that stuff. And so I was kind of just helping him out, and whatever he told me he needed, that's what I did. And so I knew he was auditioning for the show and he needed to put a tape together. And so I came over one day and I just filmed whatever he wanted filmed, which now looking back at it a decade later is very amateurish, and the things he's showing, the cooks are like, this is not it. This is not it. But I also recalled with that, he had an audition I think it was more of an open call kind of audition in downtown Chicago. And I think he had to be there at like 5 or 6 a.m. And so I lived about an hour away from him at the time. And I went to his home and spent the night so that I could drive him, because at that time he didn't have a car, so that I could drive him and drop him off in downtown Chicago at like 5 a.m., I think it was. So yes, I was a part of that whole thing when he first met Sonny Anderson. I remember having the conversations with him and how excited he was about the whole thing. I remember when she was scheduled to come to Chicago for the first time, and he was going to host a little dinner party. I think a part of him, because he was starting to do some scamming, was pulling away from people maybe he knew who were too intelligent for him to not show that side. I don't know, but where we actually had an issue was when he first opened the Cupcake Gallery, or was about to open it and doing the build out. Mm-hmm. And he pulled me in the sense of, because he knew I had the construction background, and the space he was looking at originally needed a lot of work. And he wanted my expertise, but also wanted me to basically do the work. He ended up going with a place that, the place up north on Wilson, that did not need nearly as much work. It was very cosmetic. Mm-hmm. And he wanted a wall built. Actually, now that after I did the video, I remember some other things. He wanted a wall built, and he wanted a case built to display his cupcakes. Mm-hmm. And I gave him a price, but I gave him a price that was less than what I would charge everyone else, but fair for the amount of work and the amount of time it was going to take me away from other things. And that's when I saw his, shrewd business ways. And he basically came back to me and wanted to pay me like I was a panhandler, like I was, someone addicted to drugs that he found in front of his restaurant or something. Mm-hmm. And I was like, yeah, no, that's not going to work for me. It's pointless for me to do it. And so I told him to go with someone else. And I can't even remember the details, but eventually I ended up doing it, but it ended up only being the wall. And it felt so just nasty. It just wasn't, it was like the person I knew was no longer there. And for me, I was like, I'll never do anything else for him. It's not worth it. For me, I always value my friendships over money, mm-hmm. which is how he got me.
So let's move into the I think the real meat and potatoes of why your story with Darius is so relevant to what's happening right now. There came a point in time where you and Darius went on a food truck together. Mm-hmm. Can you tell me about that? And around when was that?
This had to be in, I think it was either 2009 or 2010, and probably 2009. And it wasn't just Darius and I. It actually was Darius's best friend from high school and myself. So his ex-boyfriend / bestie at that time, and his best friend from high school. He asked us to go into a food truck business with him. And I remember it very vividly because he invited us out to dinner, and we went to a restaurant on the north side of Chicago, and it was just the three of us. And we were sitting there, and he was kind of talking about his overall vision for his everyday cooking. At that time, it was called Everyday Cooking brand. And basically presented it in the sense of, you two are the closest people to me, which is why we were the only ones out of all these other people. You two are the closest to me. And basically, I see myself, being a millionaire and things happening, et cetera. And so I want to basically take you guys with me. And so I was very clear at that time. I wasn't as like pie in the sky about the idea, because my mom has always taught me like never mix money and friends. And so I was looking at it like, I'm not broke. I have my own business, and I see my business taking me places too. However, I have always supported you, and I want to see you grow. And so if you need this as seed money, I look at it differently than benefiting me, basically. And so I was telling him that I only had interest in it if I could be an angel investor. I have zero interest in having an additional business to what I already had on my plate. And that was the agreement. And we ended up purchasing a van. This is where it gets very interesting. So we put our money in, and I think if I'm not mistaken, maybe the initial amount was maybe $4,000. So we all put in that amount, and we then within a week or so went out. He found a food truck or a truck that we were going to convert. He found it, and we all went to the dealership, and we were okay with it. And when it was time to sign for it, I was like, I just want to be an angel investor. I don't want my name on this damn truck. Because I also knew Darius at that time to not be the most responsible. So in my mind, it was, if I put my name on here, it's registered in my name, which means if there's any tickets and it's a food truck, that means that stuff is on me. And so the liability piece is what I was looking at. Sure. So I didn't want to sign, and I did not sign. I don't know why his best friend, because in my mind, I thought the best friend would sign, and I trusted the best friend in a responsibility way more than Darius. And for some reason, he didn't sign. And as Darius was signing, I was like, okay, wait a minute. Now only his name is going on this, and I don't know how I feel about this. And at the time, I knew it should have been put in the business name, but just, I don't know. It was in the moment. We hadn't discussed and broken all that down. And so Darius signed for the truck. We ended up, driving it off the lot. I ended up getting pulled in because now Darius comes with, okay, it's going to cost a lot to convert this truck to a food truck. It has to be painted. It needs, all the things that the health department says that it needs in the interior. Well, who's the person who's handy? Who's the contractor? Me. Who's the person who could figure out how to get this thing painted? Me. Well, now I got money in it. So now it's like, okay, fine. I'll help get this truck up and running, and then I'm done. And so I ended up painting the truck, put it in my yard in one of my rental properties, painted the truck, ended up figuring out everything. Now I'm reading health codes for the city of Chicago. Food trucks were new to the city of Chicago, so they didn't even have the full codes written for it yet. So it was a lot of guessing games, and a lot of the inspectors like, well, I don't know what to do with this. Hold on, let me call my supervisor kind of thing. Worked through all of that. I want to say it took maybe 2 months to finally get it all said and done. The truck is now ready to hit the road. I literally had, and again, back to the cleanliness part, the truck with the city of Chicago had to be attached to a physical kitchen where you would do some level of prepping. Well, at that time, Darius had the Cupcake Gallery, which of course had a kitchen. And so we had to get that kitchen had to now pass again. They weren't just going off the fact that it already had, a certificate, health department certificate. It needed a separate one for the food truck. And then the food truck itself, the vehicle, had to have its own license. Okay. Well, Darius failed the inspection at his own Cupcake Gallery. So now he's so busy, he can't really get to what needs to be done. And so now I'm there cleaning vents, hood vents.
So he failed the inspection for cleanliness issues.
In his bakery, yes. So of course, if he failed it there, then the bakery should also be at stake. But I don't know how that back then. It's too many years ago, so I can't. It doesn't seem like his bakery was at stake at that time. But we couldn't get the truck licensed until those things got resolved. So long story short, I ended up now at his bakery after work hours, cleaning, caulking cracks, fixing whatever the health department said needed fixed. Because Darius now is so busy. But now this is my business over here. So long story short, I even had to be there for the health inspectors. So I did get it approved. We finally got that. And so I'm like, I'm done. Get this ish on the road. Let me, clock out and be done and go back to my regular life. And then what happened was a couple of weeks go by, the truck has not gone out. Nothing's happening. Now the BFF is like, hey, all this has happened. We've now bought extra equipment. So again, original investment was $4,000, but now we're buying things. So the $4,000 didn't include the things that we needed to buy to get it done. I painted the vehicle. Who bought the paint? All those sort of things. The best friend is now like, he was looking at it like, I'm trying to make money from this. So he's feeling more anxious about, I got this kind of money in there and nothing's happening. He has a conversation with Darius about it. Darius then claims, well, I'm busy. I don't have time to go and get the supplies from the restaurant depot that are needed, the groceries and stuff. So the best friend is like, well, how can we help you so we can get this truck on the road? Darius then says, well, I need the groceries. So he says, give us the list and we'll take care of the groceries and we'll deliver them to you. Darius gives the BFF a long list of items that are needed. I mean, pot roast and salad and soups and, you know, all these things. So we end up making a time to go to, now the best friend then tells me about the conversation. And I'm like, okay, fine, whatever. We're helping him out. Let's get this thing going. We go shopping. We get all these things. The grocery bill was about, if I'm not mistaken, it was between $1,100 and $1,500.
I figured. I knew it was going to be a big bill.
11 or 1,500, because it was the most I had ever spent on groceries. And I was like, what? So the best friend and I split that amount and we paid for it, thinking we're going to get our money back. And then we brought the groceries to the Cupcake Gallery. Now, this is where it gets interesting. You start to see how much of an a-hole he is. Darius, then tells us, as once we have gotten the groceries and we're now at the Cupcake Gallery, or maybe driving there, I can't remember. He tells us that he does not have room for the groceries and that he can't have those groceries with his baking groceries, with his fridge with the cupcake stuff. Mm-hmm. It's like, why did you have us go get them then? You gave us this list. Where the hell did you think they were going? That's the kitchen that's licensed for this food truck. The Lunch Machine was the name of the food truck. Okay. That's licensed for the food. Where the hell do the groceries go? So now we're stuck with frozen meats, all kind of other refrigerated goods, and that we had to take the truck to go get. So this is not stuff that could just fit in our fridges at home. Thankfully, well, and it still was a waste, but thankfully at that time, I had one of my rental properties was vacant. Mm-hmm. It had a fridge that was empty. Mm-hmm. So we ended up figuring out, and we took it there and we literally crammed it in that fridge, and everything didn't fit. We still had to take things to our own homes. It was that much groceries. So now the best friend, now at this point, I've backed out of the communication piece. It's mostly the best friend and Darius having these conversations. And so the best friend calls Darius and is like, okay, we have the food. What are we supposed to do now? Like, we need to get the truck on the road. Darius is giving all kind of excuses of all these other things he has going on in his business world of why he can't go out. Mm-hmm. So now at this point, the best friend's like, we got to do something with this food. Otherwise, we've wasted $1,100 or $1,500, over $1,000. So we decide to try to take the truck out. Now the truck is running, his logo on it. It's fully, sync, all these things. I added the generators on it now. We're like, fine, let's try this. And so we attempted to take it out on days that we could. Neither one of us were chefs, but we're like, we got this pre-made soup. We got the things that we could make. So we went through the items that we felt we could get away with. We went to my rental property. Thank God I had it. And so we set up an assembly line and we made sandwiches, just he and I, sandwiches, cooked up the soup. We were just trying to recoup at that point. Right. Took the truck out, took it to places where, again, food trucks weren't big back then. So we took it to places where we would see those kind of like at we have the county jail. So you have those, the old school food trucks that everyone knows about. They would be out there. So we went over there. Long story short, if we even made $50, and I think we went out 2 or 3 times. Mm-hmm. So what kills me about this is Darius actually told this story on his IG Live. And I'm doing a whole video on this because it's ridiculous. Yeah. He presented as if we tried to take over the business and we thought we knew so much more than him. And we decided that we were going to just go out just because, and we failed. That was not it. We were trying at that point to recoup forget the $4,000 that we already, $4,000 plus, because we had other things we purchased, but the food that is expiring. And we can't, unlike him, we're not going to serve people things that might make them sick. So we're trying to get rid of that stuff. Otherwise, it just goes in the garbage. And looking back, he did it on purpose. Looking back, he did it.
Why? That's the question I can hear my audience yelling at me. Why would he do this?
Darius, I believe at that point, and this only do I know now from, so there's two things that now I've heard Darius's version after a decade that I just did not really fully know his version. I'm like, why would you do that to me, especially because I never did anything to him. I only was a help and never needed anything from him or wanted anything from him. But I really think his ego and pride got in the way, and he felt threatened by people questioning anything.
Those who don't like me, that wish they had half as much interest in dinner parties in their own brand like I have in mine. But I don't spend too much time focusing on them because I got to put the collard greens on and make the watermelon chow chow. But it's so many people be trying to like jump in and be like, we don't want you to succeed. It doesn't matter what you want. I will succeed, whether you like it or not. I am unstoppable. When will you learn that? When will you learn that?
In regards to him or his moves. And I think that was the biggest thing. And it still is today. Like when you see the way he interacts with his customers, those the people, his beehive on his Instagram lives, any of them who critique him or even have a legitimate concern about not getting goods or services that they paid for, he flips on them.
Hire at least one customer service rep for your business. All that person will be available. Warehouse. Sis, we don't have any issues with customer service. I think that's what I'm trying to get you to understand. Nobody's emails have been unanswered. Nobody's questions have been unanswered, right? Telling you about order 189 and haven't gotten a response. Okay, well, email one more time, sis. I'm not checking nothing this morning. I'm sorry. Email again. Today is Saturday. I'm setting up a boundary. I'm sorry to disappoint you, but I will solve your problem on Monday. All right? Whatever you be. You've also sent screenshots? All right, good. Then we'll check it on Monday. We set up a couple of boundaries. I'm sorry. All right. Sorry if that disappoints you. Well, I'll take care of it on Monday. Whatever the problem is. In the meantime, we're going to talk it over with the Lord, and then we're going to deal with it on Monday.
Honey, stop sitting up there eating all them edibles. That's probably how my wine glasses got broken, baby. Stop eating all them edibles. You high. Don't nobody hear them noises but you. You the only one hear them noises because you high. Get me right. I sent my email.
Sis, we don't have any issues with customer service. I think that's what I'm trying to get you to understand. Nobody's emails have been unanswered. Nobody's questions have been unanswered, right?
And he did that to us. He wasn't as direct back then as he is now, especially with me. But I really feel like he, at some point, thought we were the competition or something.
Even though you were investing into
his dream,
his business. And you were supposed to just be an angel investor. Like you didn't.
That's all I told him that. And he said, so he did say in his IG live when he told this story that he felt like our other friend was basically trying to come up. So what happened was after the business, us trying to go out didn't work. And we just kind of was like, now the groceries, half of them just went, we had to throw away. It just was what it was. And so now the truck is just sitting. Again, I had my own business. I had a job. It wasn't like I was desperate to make that work. And so he then reaches out to the best friend and offers to buy the truck off of us and basically buy us out, so to speak. And the friend realized that now he kind of has Darius, against the wall, so to speak. And so he says, well, I'm not going to let you necessarily buy us out, but if you give us profit share on what you're going to do with the truck, then we'll give you the truck, so to speak. Mm-hmm. So that was the agreement that Darius agreed to. That was a contract that the best friend made up. From what I remember, we did have an attorney friend look at it. He wasn't practicing. Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. And that was probably that was a huge mistake. Mm-hmm. But again, we had put so much money in it that you're trying to like save where you can. Mm-hmm. So we had a contract. Darius came and signed it. And once he signed it, the BFF was like, he signed that too quick. Like he didn't even really go too deep. So something's wrong. So sure enough, we give Darius the keys. He ended up, he took the truck out and he ended up eventually rebranding it within a few weeks. And so at that point, I got my attorney involved and we sent him, notices that, what you're doing is, goes against our terms of a contract, et cetera. And Darius just kept doing what he wanted to do. Mm-hmm. And so when it was time for us to receive our first disbursement from the profits, what Darius did was he decided to add a bunch of line items. And he gave himself a salary, he gave himself a bonus, he added in all these additional expenses. And the way that the contract was written, and this is the part he caught that we didn't, was it was off of the net.
Not the gross.
Not the gross.
So he ate up the gross.
There you go.
By paying himself and bonuses and things like that.
Which was, and any decision, now in the contract it stated that any decisions, fiscal decisions were supposed to be made by all of us, the majority vote. He didn't consult us. He just gave himself a salary. Did it. Yes. So even with that, he broke the terms of it. So anyway, at that point, he was just like, F y'all, I'm doing whatever now. Then he rebrands it to his, I think it was the Uptown Pie Company, Uptown Pies. So this was how he also, well, there's a whole, I don't want to go down another rabbit hole, but his investors of the Cupcake Gallery that he scammed, part of how he scammed them was creating another business within the Cupcake Gallery shop so that he could take those profits and say that they were being made by the company that his investors weren't a part of. So he kind of did the same thing with us with the food truck. At that point, we, were just trying to take the legal route, and he ended up selling the truck because, again, remember in the beginning, his name was the only one on the title. And so he sold it to someone and he had it on Craigslist for $12,000. I didn't even know this until a couple months ago. I knew he sold it. I never knew any details. I just heard by way of, but now I have the actual advertisement of when he was selling it on Craigslist. So he sold the truck to someone. Supposedly he did something with his lease at the Cupcake Gallery and scammed someone out of, allegedly, like maybe a sub.
Allegedly now, yeah.
Yeah, allegedly maybe a sublease kind of thing. And the person lost their entire, investment because he didn't have the right to do those things.
Wait, as in he didn't have the right to make the adjustments that he made on the property?
I think the sublease. Okay. I think he trying to sell the business as a sublease and didn't have the rights to be able to do that with the lease. And something happened with the food truck as well, where a couple lost their savings on it and ended up getting divorced from it. I'm
sorry. That's not just something was that in relation to Darius or someone who bought the truck afterwards?
In relation to who he sold the truck to, it was a couple. And the financial issues that all of that caused, of course, it's got to be more than that. But I think it was the icing on the cake.
Okay, so I know that you consulted an attorney about suing him for selling without your permission, cutting you guys out of the profit share, basically, making changes outside of the terms of your agreement. And that attorney said it's not going to be worth it, right? Because he ain't got no money, right?
Exactly.
And let me just say this, guys, that is a very normal reaction from an attorney. If they're not going to take you on a contingency, if this guy's not a millionaire. So if Darius at the time had been the millionaire he says he is today, they would have taken you on a contingency and sued because they would think they're going to get their attorney's fees no matter what. However, if he's not a wealthy person, they're going to want money up front, and then you're going to be out the money. And then there's a chance that even if you win, Darius will never pay. And you don't have any assets that you can attack in order to recoup your money. So the attorney gets paid either way. You might not. And so that's why that attorney told you that. And I was like, that's a good attorney, whoever told you that. And it sucks.
The retainer was $3,000 at that point. And that was a blessing. He was our guardian angel, because it was like, it stopped the hemorrhaging. We were just like, okay, fine. And that was the case. Like, Darius didn't even own a vehicle. He was still renting apartments. He owned nothing, and obviously was struggling because he was stealing left and right, allegedly, I guess.
Allegedly.